on this structure when obviously it has been completely taken down for the most part. We are, standing by. Of course, we do expect this structure to fall down any minute. We've heard a couple of popping noises. You can kind of see it right through there. So these crews tell me that they're standing by to make sure the vineyards in this area are not affected. But a pretty devastating scene out here, and it's kind of unbelievable to think that the last couple of years, especially in this area, has been hit so hard by these fires. We talked to CAL FIRE earlier today about the similarities between the Kincaid fire and fires in previous years. It appears that we don't have that soundbite, but that CAL FIRE official was basically saying that, it is very similar to the Tubbs fire. He said this is very reminiscent, and he told me that he has been doing this for decades, so he has seen it all. And the wind event that we saw overnight, he says, was very similar to what we saw the night of the Tubbs fire. And of course, that was absolutely devastating. Now, we did hear from CAL FIRE that the number of structures burned is up to 79, but of course, as the day progresses, we are expecting that number to go up, because you can see one right in front of you right now. This one is burning, and like I mentioned, these OES fire crews did confirm that this was in fact someone's home. So off of Highway 128 right now, just off of Chalk Hill Road, where we were earlier this morning. Maybe we can get Joseph, we can kind of walk down this dirt road here, and we can kind of get a better look a little bit at this land over here. So really just a devastating scene. As we're walking up this area, we see a little swing set right here. There's a sandbox for kids. They have chickens here. So obviously someone lived here. It's very devastating to just think that they're going to come home and they're not going to have a home to come to. It's just going to be completely taken down land. So let's make our way down this dirt road here, and you can kind of get the back end view of this structure here that was taken down. Complete loss. Now this looks like a pretty big property over here. We can take a look at this. Now earlier I wasn't sure if it was a home, but OES did confirm in fact this was a home. They said there's a swimming pool here, and we do see some benches out here and things of that nature. So really just a sad scene out here in Healdsburg, guys.
Well, it is really, it's hard to see these pictures, Sarah, and just to watch someone's life and their livelihood be taken away by this fire. In terms of conditions, how much have things changed? Because I know things were whipping around you earlier. We saw the embers kind of going into your face, and we know they've even, we've seen those same conditions elsewhere in the county.
The thing about this wind event, it's just so unpredictable. Right now, it's fairly calm, but, just about 10 minutes ago, the winds were whipping up so much that the smoke was billowing straight up. I mean, it's honestly, it's so unpredictable. Every time I feel like we're safe and the wind has really subsided, it picks up again, and we have ash all over us, all over the camera, because as the winds blow, it blows this ash, and, it is best if you have any respiratory issues, just stay as far away from this area as you can. Of course, listen to those evacuation warnings, listen to those notices from officials, because it should be taken very seriously.
Yeah, that air quality never easy to manage. I know you mentioned that interview you had a little bit earlier. Let's listen to it. We just got that ready for you.
What's going on the last 2 days is pretty much what we've been going through the last several years, especially up here in Sonoma County with the Tubbs fire. Lake and Napa counties burning the way they've been burning historically the last several years. So it's matching everything for this time of year.
So Joseph actually made his way down this road a little bit ago, and he says that there was another home down here that was lost, and there was a home up that road that was lost as well. So we'll make our way through here right now, and I mean, this is live, and I haven't seen this myself, but I can just assume that it's absolutely devastating. I mean, these are people's homes that they evacuated probably with very short notice, and they're coming back to absolutely nothing. And you could just imagine how beautiful these homes were with this amazing view that has now been completely covered by smoke. So here's a look. Yep, take a look at this. It's honestly, it chokes you up to see this. This is someone's house. They have nothing to come back to. And this fire, every time, we're just hoping that it doesn't happen again. And here we are, another fire season with so much devastation here in Sonoma County.
Boy, I guess it reminds us of Coffee Park, especially maybe the Fountain Grove area, which kind of terraced up a little bit up the hill. You stay there, Sarah. Take another peek at what you're looking at there, and let's bring Mark in. Is that fire out there? Or is that still a situation?
That's going to continue to smolder, no doubt about it, but everything around there's pretty well burnt.
Yeah.
You know, the hard part to this, even after seeing this, you never get used to it. You know, fire, the good news in some situations here is that most people have fire insurance. Unlike earthquake or hurricanes, minimal insurance in that area. So the good news, you may be able to rebuild your home, but you can never replace those mementos. It's the cleats, it's Johnny's bed, it's the photos, it's all those knickknacks that we value so much. You know, you're gone in a moment's notice.
Yep.
You come back, your house is gone, and this is what you're looking at.
I did a story with a family. Tom Stewart actually talked to us earlier. He lives in Coffey Park, and they're on their way to Vacaville right now with his 2 daughters. But he said that. After he moved into his new home, I said, how's it feel? And he goes, you know, I keep going to parts of the area where I think my couch was.
And we have Alyssa in. Those seem more rural.
Yeah.
So then in the rural areas, you have a number of challenges for firefighters, I think, in terms of water availability. You're not just hooking up to the fire hydrant and the city water. You now have to worry about, and so some of that, you know, I mean, when I was covering the Santa Rosa fires in the city, it was shocking because you were in an area where usually you'd be able to just grab water and you
Dense.
But in all these other places, when you're looking at those areas and you're seeing the challenges they're facing, things aren't as readily available.
Yeah, and they're making decisions because most of those fire engines carry maybe 1,000 gallons of water. So you're trying to determine if that 1,000 gallons of water, where best to use it.
Sure.
You know, you saw that some of this fire still burning. What they probably done was try and save the outbuilding, save the water, because there's no sense in putting out what fire is remnant. Don't waste the water, if you will.
If you come up upon a property where a homeowner may have just, you know, weathered the storm and stayed there, he's out there with a hose, are you more apt to go in and join the party, or just say, sir, it's time to leave, you've lost your home?
Depending upon and the severity of the winds here, get out. Because what we saw yesterday was a prime example of that. You know, we saw the fire burning, we saw fire ops, everybody was kind of keeping an eye on it, and all of a sudden a flare-up. Everybody's wondering, what was that? What we found out what that was there were people there that had to be evacuated, and a firefighter had to deploy their last resort to save lives was their tent shelter. So all 3 of them, the 2 evacuees and the firefighter, are in an aluminum shell laying on the ground, hoping that they'll be able to survive this.
That's a last resort.
Last resort.
And this goes to training, too. I mean, you were in an urban environment as a firefighter. A lot of these are urban firefighters who have done wildland training, who have been out there, who have years of experience in various situations. So you don't want to take away from that experience. But if you're not always in a place where you need to deploy, I mean, if you're in an urban environment, you don't need to deploy fire shelters. You get out of the building, you get defensive mode, and you're safe. A lot of these firefighters have to make these decisions, and this is, at its very essence, the on-the-job training.
Absolutely. And, you know, we talked earlier about the stress of the job and how many hours. And, you know, when they're on 24 hours, certainly they're working tremendously. But then you get to the point where within that 24-hour period, they've got to bunk down somewhere and get some meals. Well, there's no place to go to get out of the smoke. Yeah. Where do you go lay down? You know,
and do they come down to Santa Rosa, take a shower, sleep 3 hours, break bread, or are they still up on the fire lines?
They try and get them down off of the hill into the base camp, but it's also a decision about how far they must travel and how safe. In some cases, they might put them into a staging area that's safe, but not all the way back down to clear air. So sometimes they're sleeping on the hose beds on the fire engines, they're eating bag lunches that they picked up. So it's not as easy as we're going to work, now we're off work.
Right.
Your sleep's starting to diminish, the quality of sleep starting to diminish. It's a real challenge.
And that goes back to that statement of, you know, evacuation orders are not suggestions, because you are impacting. I mean, I'm sure nothing is more frustrating for a firefighter to try to do one thing, and of course you're going to divert for life and safety, and you're going to do that, and that's the priority. But if you didn't have to divert because someone left when they were supposed to, I mean, I get it that people don't want to leave. It is an emotional and difficult
Well, add to that, when they find those folks, they've got to get them out of that fire area. Because remember, firefighters have protective gear, so they can be closer to the fire. They understand that. Citizens cannot. You've got to get them long distances away.
But it also takes time away from doing what they need to do in the first place, right?
Well said.
All right.
Yes.
I wonder if we can pull up some of the pictures that we've had from before, because we should also mention to other folks that we do have these other fires burning around the Bay Area. We had, let's take a look at Clayton video, because we've had that fire that we are keeping an eye on. That one required evacuations, as did another fire in Oakley. Sky Fox was over both of those fires. In the Clayton situation, there's some video from this morning. You can see the home that up on that hill. This is the Leon fire. White smoke is a good thing, right, Mark? I always say white smoke is great because there's less fuel burning, and that's why the smoke is white. We see a lot of these fire trucks in and around that area, and bulldozers. Yeah. When you're looking at that fire pattern there, in terms of, I mean, that to me says a grassy field, because you don't see, we don't see trees or any kind of other debris in there. But that moves quickly. Absolutely, especially that area. It's a heavily forested area, and you can see the shrubs and the
winds died down a little bit. Yeah. So they're a little hamstrung with that, aren't they?
They are. They've got, I think the last time I saw, there were like 16 helicopters and 6 different fixed-wing aircraft on the incident action plan. They wanted to get them up by 8 o'clock. Jonathan Cox, division chief from CAL FIRE, was talking about 12 air operations helicopters and fixed wing, so they're able to get up, and he also mentioned, they talked about air attack, which is basically an air traffic control tower in the sky. It's a person up there keeping an eye on air traffic. They close down the airspace all around that fire. So there's no commercial air flights, there's no private. The only aircraft in that area is firefighting aircraft, and that gentleman is actually commanding that from high enough, and they're there all the time. Even when it's difficult for them to make drops, you still got an air traffic or an air commander up there keeping an eye.
And when one of those big planes we saw look like a 747, one of the bigger ones, after that drops a load, it's got to go to Travis or somewhere, reload again. How long does that take to get them back up?
They do what's known as hot load, and some of those can be 5 minutes. The 747 certainly is longer than that, but I think you had a report yesterday that I saw in one of the air bases that they were able to get that filled up in some of those cases 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
They keep it running. Yeah, it's a operation that's wonderful to see, and certainly the investment over the last I don't know, 3 months when the governor came in, they've purchased 12 more new firefighting helicopters, which will have infrared, so certainly the resources. It's such a relief when you see it coming your way that you know.
For the firefighters too, right?
Because there are so many areas that you can't reach. When we were watching that Clayton video earlier, though, they were right where that retardant was dropped, and how exact it is kind of amazing, because it was right on the line where there were other homes and other vehicles there that they were trying to save. This, as we're looking at here, this is what we were talking about earlier. This is 101 South. 101 is back open for anyone who's watching now and heard that it was closed. It was closed a 30-mile stretch as they this morning, as they expanded evacuation orders and as that fire was continuing to move. That backup there, what I imagined when I saw this video from yesterday of what it looked like, trying to do that when the fire was burning. That's what we saw in the Tubbs fire, and that was just, it was heart-wrenching to see people who couldn't get out of these areas when it was burning down around them. So while this traffic is terrible, it's a good thing.
Absolutely. And you know, with a traffic like that, you're talking about 3 or 4 lane freeway. Now imagine in neighborhoods, more remote, one lane, trying to get fire apparatus, engines, trucks up there while people are trying to egress. That's one of the reasons. And we've seen success from the 2017 fires up in Sonoma. You remember, right, there were some challenges with the communication system, the notification and alerting.
The Nixle.
The Nixle. But it looks like, by all indication, with the lack of loss of life and injury, that people were able to get out in time.
And listening.
Our reporters were saying they were having a lot of alerts just as soon as they went into that zone. All right, we are going to continue our coverage of the Kincaid fire, as well as the fires burning in Clayton, in Oakley, in South San Francisco, as well as the planned power shutoff that we are all under, 8 of our 9 Bay Area counties this morning. This continues to be a developing story, and we will have full coverage when we come back.
It's Halloween, big day.
Are you a good omen or a bad omen?
Nothing in that house is about Halloween.
911, what's your emergency?
I'm a firefighter.
Really? Your costume sucks.
Holy Mother of God.
911, Monday at 8 on KTVU Fox 2.
Tell them you have to pick up Thai spices from the farmer's market. Tell them you have to pick up your suit from the dry cleaners. The only thing they won't believe is if you tell them you went for gas. Wouldn't it be nice to cruise through your commute with the incredible range and MPG you get in a new Prius? Now get $2,500 cash back on the fuel-efficient Prius, no plug-in required. Or get $1,500 cash back on the carpool lane-friendly 2020 Prius Prime. Toyota. Let's go places.
With laser-measured floor liners and cargo liners, bump step, plus the cup phone to secure your phone, seat protectors, or no-drill mud flaps. WeatherTech's American-made products are perfect protection for any season. Order at WeatherTech.com. WeatherTech, made right in America.
Pretty fun, huh?
Love heights.
Selfie?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
What?
I think I forgot to lock my Buick. Got it.
At least your Buick's locked.
Uh-huh.
At the heart of every Buick Encore is you. Current eligible lessees get this low-mileage lease on this 2019 Encore for around $199 per month.
See your Bay Area Buick GMC dealer.
I just got internet at home for the first time, and look, I just beat my high score.
I'm all about the apps. College apps.
Spoiler alert. You're looking at the headquarters for the next big tech company.
The internet isn't a toy. It's a tool. I'm ready to make big things happen.
This year, Comcast is making Internet Essentials available for even more low-income homes, so millions of people can be ready for anything.
I'm ready.
We're ready.
For anything.
So they're ready for anything.
Last Man Standing's back.
Bingo.
Thursday, January 2nd on Fox.
And welcome back, everybody, to our extended coverage of the Kincaid fire. We're going to take you to Healdsburg, and we saw some of this video not too long ago. Our Sarah Zenadon was off of Chalk Line Road in that area. As you can see, the wind is fierce and has just turned that into a furnace. A number of homes. This is more of a rural area where you might have 3 or 4 acres in a home, that sort of thing. Not a real densely populated area, but a beautiful area. There in Healdsburg, and those homes are no more.
Yeah, and she has seen actually several structures burned, as has Alyssa Harrington up in that area. And we know that fire made a move overnight. We know because the winds that we expected would come did come at the tune of 70 to 90 miles per hour. That prompted more evacuations. As you can see there on the bottom of your screen, we now have 180,000 people under mandatory evacuation. The Kincaid fire did grow overnight. The last numbers we got were that it grew another 5,000 acres to 30,000 acres. We are expecting another press conference from CAL FIRE with another update in just about 40 minutes. At 10 o'clock is when they said they would be back to update us. But we've been talking to CAL FIRE all morning long, and they were waiting for daylight, still fighting these winds, trying to get the aerial attack underway. They had about 3,000 firefighters on the line, 10% containment, but this thing was continuing to grow, and that's why they expanded the evacuation orders down to Santa Rosa and the northwest part of Santa Rosa. And so when we were talking to the Santa Rosa authorities down there trying to get people out of those areas, they were going around with their high-low sirens trying to make sure that everyone heard that it was time to leave. They had already been put on warning, so when the order came very early this morning to get out, theoretically they should have been ready to go. And so far we are not hearing of any major problems with getting people out of these areas.
And good news too, we have heard of no deaths or major injuries thus far from what is just a massive fire. We also have some video of the Soda Rock Vineyard, which our Alyssa Harrington has been at most of the morning. That vineyard had been there for 150 years. They just went through a 10-year renovation, and sadly, there in Healdsburg, that is no more as well. So this is a very, very serious situation, and that fire continues to grow and move its way south as well.
We should mention Santa Rosa Kaiser has been evacuated. Sutter in Santa Rosa has also been evacuated. We have numerous evacuation centers that have been put up in and around the area. The Petaluma evacuation centers are full, so people have departed the area, but Highway 101 is back open. The winds are going to continue to be a problem. We are hoping they will slow down soon, but Rosemary Orozco watching these ongoing conditions and these ever-changing conditions with more of what we can expect over the next 24 hours. Rosemary.
Yes, those winds came through with a vengeance early this morning. As you said, they are expected to taper off just some. Will remain breezy, though, for the entire day. The advisories in place for wind as well as the red flag warning does not expire until tomorrow. Here's a view of from Sarah Zendenam. She sent this earlier right about the sunrise, and you can just see both Sarah and the National Weather Service reported not only the smoke out there, but falling ash. So poor air quality over the North Bay. We do have fires in the East Bay as well as near San Francisco, or at least earlier this morning. And so we can expect to see that smoke throughout the course of the day. Here's a look at some of the strongest gusts reported earlier this morning. Hillsburg Hills, 93 miles per hour. We're talking hurricane force winds that topple trees, bring down those power lines, blow debris all over the place. Mount St. Helena reporting 87, Mount Diablo 61, Hawkeye 76, and even in our valleys, we had some pretty strong wind earlier this morning. Petaluma reporting 53 miles per hour. And it wasn't just the North Bay and the East Bay Hills. San Francisco down into the South Bay. Spring Valley in the hills near San Francisco, 53 miles per hour. Mallory Ridge reporting 46. Rose Peak, the inner East Bay, reporting 50. Ben Lomond, 23 miles per hour, and that's some of the lighter winds I've seen so far. Here's a look at the current conditions. We do have Mount St. Helena still reporting anywhere from, it's hard to read this number there, but it's 60 to 70 mile per hour winds there. If we shift to the east, we've got Black Diamond over the Mount Diablo area. The winds are gusting to 33, Mallory Ridge right now 42, and then we'll hop over to San Francisco where we have near the Golden Gate to 40 miles per hour, and Spring Valley gusting quite strong as well, anywhere from 40 to 50. As we get into the second part of the morning, early afternoon, the winds will begin to calm down just some. That darker shade of orange turning into yellow as we get into the afternoon, but you can see the winds never go away. They are going to continue into the evening hours. It really takes until early tomorrow morning before we finally begin to see those wind gusts taper off. So we are looking at the red flag warning, not only for our hills, but for our North Bay Valley locations, as well as our East Bay Valley locations, lasting all the way until tomorrow morning. Doesn't expire until 11 o'clock. Let's touch on your temperatures before I let you go. Upper 50s right now in San Francisco, low 60s in Oakland. For Livermore, starting out right about 57 degrees. And then as we get into the afternoon, not bad with the temperatures. We've got a mild day. 72 San Francisco, upper 70s in Concord, upper 70s over areas of San Jose. Here's a look at your extended forecast getting into the days ahead. The temperatures will continue to cool back up again as we get into Wednesday, Thursday. But the extended forecast, they're a bit concerning, guys, because as you can see, no rain in the forecast. Back to you.
All right. Thanks, Rosemary. And we are getting reports of another fire by the Carquinez Bridge. Your friend has sent you some video.
Actually, just had a friend and a couple people have texted me near the Carquinez Bridge in Vallejo. There apparently is a fire there, and we'll try to get you some video of that as well.
We'll make some calls, and we'll figure out what's going on there, but that's just one of many fires that we've seen pop up around the Bay Area, in addition to the Kincaid fire. We want to go down to meteorologist Kyla Grogan. When we last talked to her, she was stuck in traffic trying to get her and her mom out of the danger zone into safety. And Kyla, where are you now?
So I'm in Southern Roanoke Park. We're with family, and I'm happy to say we made it here safe and sound, and we're now, amongst the lucky ones who have a place to be to ride this out. So we're doing okay. I can tell you, though, that here in Roanoke Park, the wind has been whipping. I mean, we're at a little bit of a lull right this second, but I'm out on a porch right now because I just came out to check it out, and it's just been kind of a constant wind as we go throughout the day. And, of course, being a meteorologist, that makes me very concerned for the firefighters because the wind just makes things a little unpredictable for them, and it's very difficult for them to do make a lot of progress until this wind dies down. And as you heard Rosemary say, that's not really going to happen to a great degree until we get into tomorrow morning. Here we go again with the wind gusting. So, it's going to be a rough ride, but I can tell you that we feel pretty good where we are now. Where my mom lives is the exit up there, Centennial, where now I don't believe they're letting people go any further north, that they've closed that down. It's been a little bit of a nerve-wracking morning, but, this is the second time my mom's been through this since she's moved out here from the east, and so she now is a little more receptive to evacuating. It's tough. People don't want to leave their houses, but I'm glad to hear that a lot of people are doing that, and certainly we were accompanied by many people doing exactly that on the highway. So we're doing okay.
Kyla, tell us how long it took, because you were in kind of the northern portion of Santa Rosa. Roanoke Park's just a town south of there. How long did it take you to go 101 down there?
Right. So the ride that would normally take, like 7, 8, maybe 10 minutes took the better part of an hour. And at one point I kind of, got the GPS and was going down, thought, right, let's get off the highway here, one exit early and try to wind our way through. And that worked out pretty well. But it was a crawl, and there were a lot of emergency vehicles kind of going back and forth. So it kind of meant that everyone had to, squeeze in and let that lane be free. And I was happy to see that people were doing that, right? Like, people seem very mindful of the fact that, look, these emergency vehicles, you got to let them through. You got to let them through. And that was happening. So that was good.
All right, Kyla Grogan, we're glad. How's your mom doing? I know this has been nerve-wracking for her.
It has been, but she had her little suitcase in her hands and said it's time to go. I was glad to see she was ready to take off without much prodding this time. She's had her coffee. My sister's taken great care of us, and we feel very thankful, and we hope everybody else out there. I know a lot of people don't have a place to go, right? So they're maybe going to a shelter, having to hang out, but, we're lucky. We have family down a little bit further south. It's not easy, It's not easy. This is tough. Some of the things that make this part of California so beautiful are also part of the things that make it a little bit of a danger. And these are idyllic, beautiful communities up here, right, with green hills and a lovely town. But unfortunately, it also has the danger of these forest fires, and we get the dry summer and no rain.
Well, I know you raced to her from the airport, so I would guess, Kyla, that she's happy because she has her suitcase, but she's happier because she has you by her side. And
that goes two ways. I worry a lot less when I can keep my eye on my family members, as I'm sure.
Yes, well, keep an eye on them, and we appreciate you, and keep an eye on those winds, because it's nice to have an expert up there keeping an eye on conditions on the ground as well.
You got it. All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyla. Let's take you over to Alyssa Harrington. She's moved. She was near the winery at Soda Rock. She's now on Chuck Hill Road, where Sarah was a few hours back. What are you seeing there, Alyssa?
I'm on Chalk Hill Road, where behind me you can see a property that burned, and we're seeing quite a few vehicles. It looks like a tree trimming truck scorched, a lot of burnt debris. We're seeing bed frames, old fireplaces. I mean, it's really even hard to tell what was there, how many homes were there, if this was all one property. But this area clearly, very, very damaged by that fire. And every once in a while we are hearing little sounds, little popping. So we're trying to stay back, because you just never really know what is in that area that is still burning. Now I want to show you, there are firefighters on scene. They're going through the area. We've seen them out with their hoses. They're walking up and down these streets, looking for any hot spots, making sure that they get out the bulk of these fires, because this morning we're seeing a lot of wind, very strong wind gusts. In fact, at one point the wind gust was so strong it picked up all this dirt off the ground. I couldn't even see out the windshield of our car. I mean, it was amazing. So these wind gusts are really something else, really challenging for firefighters who are trying to stop the spread of this fire and really don't want those winds to continue moving the flames and moving the embers to different areas of this community. So we have seen a lot of damage this morning. Basically, right when we got into Healdsburg and started driving up Chalk Hill Road, there were different properties on fire. The flames came all the way out to the road. And then when we made it up to Highway 128, we went to the Soda Rock a winery, and that was also destroyed by the fire. We showed you that a little bit early this morning. So a lot of damage here in Healdsburg. I got a chance to speak with the mayor of Healdsburg yesterday, and he talked, about what a great community this is and how he really just hoped everybody stayed calm during the evacuations, and that they were going to, do their best to make it through this together. So definitely a community that's going through a lot right now, but I can tell you that firefighters were also staged up and down the road. They are trying to protect the properties that have not burned, and then are also, of course, trying to take care of the fire that is working its way through the area. There we're seeing an engine head out, that one with Palo Alto. There's mutual aid from all over the Bay Area and beyond helping fight this fire. Reporting live in Healdsburg, Alyssa Harrington, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
Mark, we're just chit-chatting away here about these homes. They belong to someone. Perhaps they're watching, maybe not. They don't even know if they're going to get up there and see. I know with I got family in Paradise, And we actually had some reporters go back up and check on some homes because they wouldn't let people up there. That's got to be really tough for these people that are, you know, maybe in Roanoke Park, in Vallejo, or wherever, waiting to hear.
Well, and that, you know, that points out the importance of media, too. You know, in terms of being able to provide information to folks, is your home there or not? And everybody's looking to get information, and through this medium, they're able to find out an awful lot about what's going on, which is wonderful.
So when you're looking at that picture that we just saw from Melissa, that area for you is clear. It's all that fire truck pulling out, and you're saying, okay, there are bigger fish to fry, essentially, at that point.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out where best to use their resources and to do it safely. That's the key, too. They're trying to keep an eye on the fire.
Communication much better. I mean, you've got folks from Palo Alto, whether they're from Nevada, different places. They don't know the area. This is not their home. They're trying to get to where they're going. You've got power out in terms of communication. Everything by radio, everything by that first briefing to say, you guys head out to that area. Is it a little bit of you guys can make some decisions in this region when you see smoke or something pop up?
You know, you do the best you can in terms of educating and informing through those briefings. There's no question about that. We talked about the incident action plan. They go through safety, logistics, deployment, all of that. But also, you know, when they transition, they're trying to transition with the crew that's coming out. Hey, tell us what you saw, where were you, give us some information.
What have you done?
Yeah, as you transition back and forth. So they're trying to get real-time information as well, which is critical. And then a lot of times it's just making decisions when you're there.
Yeah, and you have to, just based on what comes in front of you.
Absolutely.
But the bigger picture, how does someone back in the command center know, well, Chalk Hill Road, we've got this situation under control. How does that all come back for the bigger picture?
Great question, too. They have aerial capabilities, so when they're flying, they're able to take some pictures and get that back. They've also got what they call field observers, and there are people out, and their specific job is to walk the fire lines, to talk to the folks, what's going on, what do you see,
and report back.
Report that back, communicate that back. All of that goes into a planning section within the command post. Wow. And so they're processing that data. They're trying to forecast from not just today, what we're doing today. They're actually operating off a plan that was developed yesterday.
So you've got 3,000 firefighters out there now. How many people are doing the other stuff, the planning?
Good question. Hundreds. Now, they've got contractors that set up the base camps for them, the trailers, you know, laundry, food, trailers for bedding and places to sleep and meals. So there's a tremendous support within the private sector, and they can do this. They've done it so much that they're really good at it.
Okay, Mark, I'm going to interrupt you really quickly because we've got Sky Fox over the Carquinez Bridge right now. When you're talking about the big black smoke coming from that area, they just issued a SIG alert. The CHP says this is going to be shut down for a while. They said on the log it was affected in both directions, and you can see why. The black smoke, Mark, when we're talking about, we were seeing white smoke earlier and going, that's a good sign, because that means that, you know, most of the fuel has kind of burned up and it's closer to the end. This is the dark black smoke that makes me think we got a little bit of work ahead of us.
Yeah, when I look at that, one of the things you start to wonder is what's actually burning. You know, if it was forestry, shrubs, grass, white smoke. We saw it yesterday where that smoke color changed because it got into a different fuel load. In this case, it looks like it's some sort of petrochemical or tires.
You do have refineries in that area. The C&H sugar factory right there, right in the Crockett.
It came in as a report of a grass fire on a hillside. But it went up to the houses. It did say that they will need to evacuate some of the houses. This is according to the CHP. So Glen Cove, and that's what it's called, the Glen Cove fire. Glen Cove is actually a subdivision that is on the Vallejo side of the Carquinez Bridge. The sugar factory you're talking about is on the Martinez. So the Carquinez Bridge connects Vallejo and Martinez. On the Vallejo side is the Glen Cove neighborhood with a lot of houses very, very close together. So if that's going anywhere near on that side, that's where you're going to have some fuel issues in terms of structures. On the other side, you have the refineries. I'm trying to imagine.
I think that's Crockett, not Martinez. So it goes from Vallejo to Crockett on the other side.
Yeah, Martinez on one side of it, though, as you pull down into there, very, very close to that that area. You also have the Maritime Academy and a couple different things right when you get over on that end. So that's a decent amount of smoke.
It is, and it's diminishing a little bit. So you know, we're trying to be optimistic here, hoping. But you notice the thickness of that smoke, and it's crossing the bridge area. So not only are you dealing with the fire itself and the spreading of that fire, but you're also concerned
visibility with Highway 80,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. All of that consequence.
And that's Highway 80. That's the major thoroughfare, you know, getting from Crockett and Richmond and whatnot up over that bridge into Vallejo.
Here's another report saying vehicles are turning around, going the wrong way in all lanes. So that kind of smoke, when you can see it, you can't even see the bridge. So you can only imagine for the cars that are on the Carquinez Bridge how confusing and how scary that is when you're not sure what's going on, which is why they've issued a signal alert, which is why they're going to likely shut down. They were talking about it affecting the eastbound lanes, but it's in both directions now. In the area of Magazine Street, they're calling this a brush fire, the Glen Cove fire, but Magazine Street is right into Vallejo, so all that smoke pushing back, and that's a huge swath of smoke.
It is, and if they haven't already done it, they'll be doing it in moments or minutes here. They're going to shut down that bridge on one end.
They already have. I'm just getting some information here from a friend of mine that's stuck in traffic there. 80 past the toll plaza is closed. Right now they're telling people to turn around basically and get off the highway right now.
And Maritime is right there. That's like one of the first exits as you come out there, because I went to high school up in that area, so I know that area very well. But certainly, you know, at this time of day, you would have had a decent amount of people using that bridge on a Sunday going through there. But that looks like it is going pretty good. And unlike some of the other fires, it doesn't look small. And I don't know if, you know, what in terms of fuel creates that much smoke, Mark.
Yeah, my sense would be.
And we're asking you to guess, obviously.
Yeah.
But if it's going into those neighborhoods, and I don't know, as Chopper's making its way over there and continuing to get over there, if they can hear us and can zoom in a little bit to see the neighborhoods. We talked about the Glen Cove neighborhood is a little bit closer into towards Benicia, the actual neighborhood itself. But that looks like it's definitely affecting.
No question, we're zeroing in there a little
bit. What about resources, too? Could these firehouses have sent people up onto the front lines as well?
The departments certainly have, but they also plan for something like this. You know,
yeah, there we go. We can see a good view in there. It looks like it's
annual grasses.
It's sandwiched in between neighborhoods, though, right? Right in the middle of them, and so then they've got to figure out how to protect on both sides.
See some power lines right there in the midst.
Right,
of smoke.
It's going straight towards those power lines, which is going to be an issue. I don't know if that part of Vallejo was affected by this planned power shutoff. I know Benicia wasn't affected. A lot of their power lines are underground. I mean, I'm making that assumption is why Benicia had some power, but right now our producers and our news team looking up whether or not this area was under this planned power shutoff. But certainly, you got a station on both sides there, because it looks like, you know, both are threatened. And you can see the freeway right behind there. There's 80 going through it.
Yeah, I see an open fire flame there moving up the hill.
We haven't seen the fire apparatus yet, although you can see a little bit, I think, on the other side of there. You have a gas station, and you have, I thought I saw some lights, but mobilizing it in terms of how quickly. I mean, this was first called in according to the CHP log. It looks like about 9:07, so about 30 minutes ago. And it says, and the latest log said the homes along Jordan Street are in danger and one is possibly catching fire. Again, this is unconfirmed, but this is what the CHP log is reporting as some of the concerns. So they are diverting traffic off to State Road 4. Westbound 80 is blocked at 780. 780 is the freeway that goes through Benicia. Traffic is going through there. Obviously, at this point, it's still developing. They don't have a time.
I think you're getting a better view, too, now. You can see that it's more of a brush fire, not a refinery or any kind of petroleum product like that. Are we under evacuation there, too, Mark? I mean, if you're on scene, you're probably moving people out of those homes, right?
Well, you're trying to attack the fire initially. This is a good example, if you can see, from Skyfox and the open fire line. What's interesting about that is the wind is blowing against the fire versus the wind blowing behind that fire. So what's happening is the fire's starting to spread a little bit, but because the wind is blowing against it, it keeps it from moving as quickly as if that wind were behind it. So that's good news. There are high voltage transmission lines through there that you are concerned about because of the smoke, no doubt. You're also concerned about the structures that are there. We do see 2 tanks close by there. Yeah. So those are exposures. Within minutes, I'm sure you're going to see firefighters working that line very quickly.
Well, and this is just, you know, in terms of, we don't know how this fire started, a grass fire, so there, I mean, there are a lot of different ignition sources, and we heard this during the last planned power shutoff, was that it's not necessarily a down line that starts a fire, but the wind that we have, and I don't know, Rosemary, if you can weigh in on this wind and how high the winds are in this area of Vallejo and Crockett and the Martinez area.
Yeah, it looks like sustained winds to anywhere from 10 to 20 miles per hour, and I do see one gust in around the Benicia Martinez area is gusting to about 20-25, and then a little bit over areas closer to Fairfield. We've got wind gusts reaching close to 60. So, you know, it could be anywhere between, you know, 20-mile-per-hour gusts to 40, I would guess. But yeah, so hopefully.
Is this a secondary fire we're looking at?
I think we're looking at 2 fires now. One on the Vallejo side, and this looks like it may be on the other side as well, climbing up into those hills.
And it looks like the initial fire has actually jumped over the freeway, the roadway there. It's on both sides of the freeway, it appears, the initial one.
And this is, so, and this is what we're talking about. So it's not just, and this is going down by the water. So this, it actually is fairly confusing to see what we're looking at right now. It could be a third area that is on fire now down by the dock. And I'm not sure, you know, looking at you know, in terms of where the Maritime Academy is over there and Vallejo, where exactly this is burning so close to. But it looks like it's gotten a good, decent amount of land burned so far.
Yeah, it looks like it's certainly burned down to the water on the right-hand side. Looks like it's spotted or jumped over the freeway area onto the left-hand side of the screen. And then we have a secondary fire that we saw just earlier. And that may be a spot fire as a result of this fire.
Which is a fair distance because it's got to jump over the bay. You got Cummings Parkway there, which takes you from Crockett on a skyway over to Martinez, over towards Port Costa. And those hills are just ripe. Dry grasses, rolling hills, just...
And 780 to 80 now is going to be closed. So that is the area that if you were trying to go over from Benicia or the Benicia Bridge all the way to the Vallejo, you would cross 780 and get over there, but that is closed. We're trying to pull up the PG&E map for you right now. That's on the right side of your screen, but the PG&E site has been very busy this morning, and so sometimes it doesn't work in the same amount of speed. You can see our circling circle there of that's trying to work. Oh, take a look at the topper video though. That looks like vehicles now on fire. If we can take that picture full, you can see, yeah, it's moving. So this is what we've been worried about. Separate from the Kincaid fire, separate from what was already burning and that moving over, we have been worried that any fire that breaks out, and that's what PG&E had said, any fire that breaks out will have the potential to spread very, very quickly. And Rosemary, you're talking about 20-mile-an-hour gusts. That's not the same as the 50 and the 90 that we've been seeing, but it is enough. This is obviously moving on its own, right?
Right.
You know, I mean...
And the winds, we talk about spot fires, and this is exactly what happens when you have those very strong winds. Mark, how do you even attack this? I mean, it's so hard to even grasp what's going on from our vantage point, which is above the fires.
Absolutely, great question. This is a major incident that's starting to transpire because you've got fire within the building, in the complex, and businesses. It's spreading. You've got high transmission lines. You've got spotting. So this is a major incident that's going to start to be able to work. In terms of where you're going after, you're going to try and get and protect those exposures. Obviously the people, the tanks, you've got to get down into those business areas. So this is going to require a lot of resources.
Well, and you've also got refineries not too far from there. You got C&H Sugar, a huge sugar plant on the Crockett side. You've got where do you start?
Yeah. Bridges.
Yeah, they're going to make a determination probably to try and get into those building areas. The tanks themselves in the refinery areas, although the assumption would be that's a dangerous area. We've recently had a fire, last week in the refinery because of it. So there's some concern there, but typically the tanks do not catch fire from something of this nature unless there's a tremendous amount of radiant heat very close to those tanks, but the tanks have clearance around them too.
What's interesting to look at right now is when we look at it over above, we have that ridge line, which looks to be the main part of the fire, but as the chopper has pulled out, you see all the different spotted areas around it that we're talking about in terms of, and they're not small fires, right? Now you see that grove of trees that is now underway. And so each one of those then begins to spread, and then the smoke becomes even harder to. Now, do you ignore this part? Going down towards the water, it's going to have that. Obviously, it's your natural fire break. It's the Carquinez Strait giving you a fire break so that you can focus on homes. This is a get to the homes, get the people out kind of fire already.
Yes. Start some evacuation if necessary, try and protect the structures, any rescue that might be necessary, get to the businesses. To your point, it's going to burn down to the water. That's not a big issue. But here comes the other side of this, is that, you know, when we talk about city or urban firefighters within the Northern California area, we very much rely upon CAL FIRE.
CAL FIRE to come in and help.
Do air ops.
And they're busy.
And so they're busy. I'm sure they've got resources, but that's going to be a request.
We saw some transmission towers in that last shot as it panned over to. Those go down, and we're in a hole. When you're talking about the recovery of even after this fire, you've got some issues there too.
And just getting to this fire now. Yes. Highway 80 is shut down. You can't even see to get over that bridge. And as we all know,
resources have got to come from the other direction. You got to clear that bridge. You got to get down under there. That's part of that hampers.
How about from the water? Do they attack it from there?
If there's a potential to do that, certainly there is. You know, in terms of fireboats, San Francisco, Alameda, they may be able to, Coast Guard, I'm sure there's some requests going on. And, you know, PG&E with the high transmission lines there, typically the smoke won't damage those lines, but if the density of the smoke is such, it can create problems in the transmission of electricity, or as precautionary, they may shut down that area. I mean, that just kind of adds to all of this discussion about power outage, et cetera, depletion of resources. And, you know, they've planned for this, though. To some degree, they've brought people from western United States. We heard this morning, Jonathan Cox report from CAL FIRE that he saw a fire engine from Sparks, Nevada.
Right, all the way from Nevada.
So they're bringing folks from the west.
Do those towers concern you?
Not
More
too
so
much.
than others? Okay.
Not too much. It's high voltage. I mean, there's concern that if for some reason one of the breakers trips and a line hits the ground, then you've got a safety concern for the firefighters.
For the firefighters.
From that standpoint, so you're trying to keep an eye on it, no question. You don't want to ignore it.
You got two big neighborhoods on both sides of the Carquinez Strait. You got Glen Cove over there in Vallejo, and I'm just looking at a map now. Crelona Heights, you may remember Nantucket's. It's not too far from there, a restaurant that used to be right under the bridge, and to the right of that is a pretty good-sized community by the C&H Sugar Factory. And once again, those hills by the Cummings Parkway go all the way to Martinez and Port Costa. There isn't much there in terms of structures, but with that wind blowing that way, there's not much of a fire break.
No, and is the Glen Cove neighborhood, that's a hilled area, isn't it? I mean, it's not flat, it's doesn't it?
Yes, it goes up. There's a big, decent hillside to it, and it goes up. So the Glen Cove neighborhood is kind of tucked into an area, the neighborhood itself along 780, fairly close to Benicia, and so a little bit further down. But there are, my aunt lived on the hill, lives in the hills that are right outside on that hillside, and it's a beautiful view of the Carquinez Strait. So when you're talking about all the homes that are in that area, there are many, many homes that are kind of built up along that hillside, and it is actually a very tight, packed neighborhood. So going through there and getting those people out will be, you know, not a small task because you have so many people that are there, and really smaller streets and a smaller little community there.
You know, one of the things we sometimes forget about in all this too is that the Bay Area is congested with traffic. And so when you start to shut down major freeways, there's impacts throughout the Bay Area. It's not in just that geographical area where the incident is.
Well, here's 80, and say you want to go to Sacramento, so you're going to take 24-680, and now that's going to be packed. If you would take 580 and head out that way towards Tracy and cut up 5, that's going to be packed. Yeah.
Would some of the evacuees from, you know, up in the Santa Rosa area, would they be traveling through that area? I don't know. But it's just, that's one of the things that incident commanders, along with, when we talk about, Jonathan Cox talked about it this morning, a unified command group. And it's agencies, it's CHP, it's the sheriffs, it's Public Works, it's all of the different agencies that are involved are huddled together. It's an individual that has decision-making authority along with the ability to expend money in that unified command, trying to make decisions, because it's not just a fire. It's all the consequences.
Right, and how do they turn on
let's really quickly take a look, because the chopper just, Sky Fox got a close-up shot of this. You can see the folks in the traffic of everyone stopped there as that hillside fire. That is completely separate from the issue that we're talking about over in Vallejo. This is Martinez, which is also suffering its own grass fire that is spreading. We don't see any apparatus along that way. Conceivably, the fire trucks are going that way, because the bigger danger is now this is close to the freeway. Those cars are sitting there going, can someone hurry up? Because we want to get out of here. And that is when, we heard the reports of people turning around on the Carquinez Bridge going the wrong way. Right. People start to panic, and they just want to get out of there. And when the fire is that close to them, nobody likes that.
No, and you were talking earlier about getting resources, fire engines, etc., in there.
Yes, and then you have to get through there and get by them. We should mention it's 9:51. We are awaiting a press conference as this continues to burn and this continues to develop. These two major fires on either side of the Carquinez Bridge that we can see from Sky Fox, both are heavily affecting traffic of people trying to get away from this area since these fires broke out within the last hour. But we are also keeping an eye on the Kincaid fire, because that is continuing to burn. That one is got 180,000 people under evacuation. And this is, again, just for people's reference points, right outside, right when you get off the bridge into Crockett and into Martinez. This is the area.
Well, this is a good view now. So you can see C&H Sugar Factory right there, kind of at about 2 o'clock at the top of your dial. And then to the right, as you're heading towards Vallejo, you're heading eastbound. You can see we got a fire under there. And once you get over the bridge, the Carquinez Bridge, there's a fire directly located to the left of the bridge itself in Vallejo and the Glen Cove neighborhood.
Yeah, so go ahead, Rosemary.
At the CHP traffic website, and it started near I-80 in Panoma, right there at the off-ramp, and then within about 10 minutes, multiple people calling in saying that it moved over to the Crockett side and then the Vallejo side, and so as we can see from our vantage point here, it is just...
So maybe the source was the same, but we have now separate areas that are burning. We should mention, again, we are waiting for a 10 o'clock press conference on the Kincaid fire. CAL FIRE had scheduled that earlier this morning for an update on the situation there. And that is an active fire that has grown 5,000 acres at least overnight. Now that we've had some daylight, we are expecting some new updates on the 10% containment that we last heard and the evacuations and the effort up there to really unprecedented effort to make sure to protect lives and get people to safe areas. But as we have been watching that Kincaid fire, we have seen these other fires break out. One was in Oakley this morning. That required some evacuations. One was in Clayton. That also required evacuations. We know in Vallejo, not on this portion as far as we've heard, but on the other side of the bridge, they are also going to have to evacuate some homes, because we can see just from our vantage point that there are homes nearby. And so while we haven't gotten official confirmation, we are making the assumption, the educated assumption, that when you're close to homes, you're going to get them out. And this is affecting major thoroughfares of traffic as people try to figure out how to avoid this area. And as you can see, it's going pretty good.
You know, the Glen Cove fire, this picture is really illustrative of why they were so aggressive yesterday with evacuation, because you can see how far the embers traveled from across the water and the bridge to start this fire. And I'm guessing that's probably half a mile.
Maybe a mile.
Maybe a mile.
Yeah.
And so what we heard from CAL FIRE yesterday is they were concerned with such high winds causing spotting up to a mile away. And the interesting part about that from the incident action plan yesterday, and when you talk about spotting, they also talk about a probability that that ember, once it lands somewhere, will actually ignite a fire. Right. And so they couch that in terms of percentages. Yesterday, they were talking about spotting at 1/4 to 1/2 mile with about an 80% chance of it starting a spot fire. The IAP, during the time that we were talking about yesterday, Incident Action Plan from CAL FIRE, they were talking about spotting fires a mile away with a probability of 97% starting fires.
Yeah, it's going to start a fire. It'd be very unusual if it didn't. Yep. You know, and we're looking at this picture as it makes its way up the hillside, but as Sky Fox showed us a little bit of a pan down towards the freeway, you can see a helicopter now going there. We can go back towards the freeway. What seems to me is this confusion. We have a very good vantage point from where we're watching, but look at those cars right there. They're trying to figure out which way do we go? They're looking on the freeway, they see smoke ahead of them, they're looking to the right, they see smoke over there, they see cars stop, and everyone wants to get away from it, but you can't really figure out how to get away from it. Obviously, those cars aren't going anywhere, so you'd imagine at some point they're going to start going, well, maybe we need to go the other way. Fortunately, there's no fire in front of them, and they maybe can see that, but I think this is why you want everyone out of an area like they did up in the Kincaid fire, because there's so much confusion once the fire starts to burn about trying to figure out where to go, and it looks like I can barely see that. I'm guessing it looks like a fairly big apparatus. I mean, you want to shut down traffic, and that's what they're doing. The bridge is shut down right now.
I mean, these motorists that are stuck there, I mean, when do you make the move and say, you know, get out of your car and get out of there?
Yeah, what they're going to do, if you noticed it looks like the opposing direction, they've shut down traffic. So as soon as CHP has an area that's shut down and free of traffic, they're going to start turning around the existing cars there and get them out of there.
Get them out.
But they want to assure that the other traffic flow has stopped and cleared.
Right.
Okay, and Cal Maritime Academy, you said that's on the other side of the bridge, on the Vallejo side. They are now alerting everyone. It says evacuate the campus. The fire has jumped the freeway. Evacuate the campus. There's the tweet from Cal Maritime telling all their folks to get out and get to safety. So this is a developing situation in terms of what's going on and the ability for everyone to get to safety. Cal Maritime is tucked down by the water, and we saw that fire make its way down that hillside towards the Carquinez Strait. But when you talk about places and ways to get out, you want to make sure that everyone who needs to get out can get out. The CHP log also showing that people are calling, those cars that we're seeing stuck on the freeway are calling saying we're trapped, help us out. So this is becoming a situation where you've got a lot of different people. You got the neighbors who we saw the fire near their houses saying, what do we do? How do we get out of here? You got Cal Maritime, which I'm going to try to look up, and it says it serves 1,000 students. Yep. One of only 7 degree-granting maritime academies in the U.S. and the only one on the West Coast, but they've got 1,000 students that go to that campus. I'm not sure how crowded it would be on a weekend or how many may or may not live there or commute into that campus, but they're evacuating all their folks. And then
you've also got a highway that's shut down to get those people out of there in the first place.
With people trapped there too. And so those houses, I mean, those people have to get out of their homes, and I would imagine, Mark, you'd get that whole neighborhood out, not just the closest ones, but I don't know how deep into that neighborhood do you go to just to make sure that, especially with the winds we have, that you're not leaving anyone in harm's way.
Yeah, I think what they're going to try and do is get anybody that's close to that fire and downwind start to evacuate. They're trying to send that message. What we did see, I think earlier in the shot, was one fire engine staged at, it looks like, the base of where the fire started, so they're probably radioing ahead, calling in resources, whether it be air ops, additional fire engines. They're doing a size up, letting folks know what needs to be done and how to attack this fire. Earlier we saw the smoke density and the color of smoke, and we were questioning, why is it so dark? We can see that smoke is getting heavier, and it's starting to, in this case, the grassland area, but we're also seeing it spread to vehicles in the parking lot, and I would assume it's probably going to start threatening those buildings as well.
What would you say to a homeowner that's sitting there with a garden hose saying, I'm not leaving?
Well, here comes the debate. Shelter in place. Can you get in your car and safely leave that area, or is it better for you just to close your windows, be safe? And that's a question. Now, where we're viewing right now, those folks are safe. They can shelter in place there. It's
well, you got the fire coming in from the other side.
But you do have a little bit of a break. There's some concern to it. The radiant heat might not be too bad, but from an incident command standpoint, you've got multiple challenges here without question.
So you have this side of the Glen Cove fire where it is near the homes. On the other side, I just got a tweet from a guy named Keith. He said, I spoke to a family in Crockett. Crockett is the area where we saw the freeway kind of shut down. And he said power is out there. The smoke is making them choke. They can't see the news without power. I suggested they evacuate. 80 closed. The only way out is Cummings Skyway, which is a serious situation. And yes, Crockett is a tiny little town. It's tucked into that little hillside. It's lovely. A lot of people go there to go to the Dead Fish. There's a little restaurant there. But it is, you have that one exit that they built out onto the freeway that gets you out of town. And so certainly that will be a concern for folks who say, okay, if I want to get out, I can't see which way to go. And that again is, we go back to the confusion of where people are. It's hard to get a big picture of this just because we're looking microscopically at both sides. But if maybe Skyfox can pull out a little bit. But an extraordinary, and how quickly this happened at what, 9:15?
Yeah, and what are the winds? What were we talking about earlier?
20 to 30 in that area, I believe, Rosemary.
Pretty good. You can see it spreading from vehicle to vehicle.
Well, let's bring Rosemary in. Talk about the winds that are in that general area right now.
Yeah, you know, of course, we know that the red flag warning and the wind advisories are pretty much Bay Area wide when it comes to North Bay, East Bay, but our focus being on the North Bay because those winds were hitting nearing 90 miles per hour earlier this morning. But in this area, the winds gusting between 25 and 50. But take a look at what can occur with that type of wind. And right now, the closest reading I can find is in and around Martinez, and it's a north breeze at about 22. And then you get over closer to the Diablo range, and the winds are closer to about 40 miles per hour. So we're probably somewhere within that.
And these winds are going to sustain for a while.
The winds are going to continue as we get into Sunday. We're not expecting really them to die down and go away until tomorrow.
This is video of a friend of mine that sent this in, Dr. Bill Hummer, a college bud of mine, and he's been watching our coverage and said, you might want to take a look here in Vallejo. And sure enough, this was right when it just started. And I believe he went over the bridge, but I mean, you could see the sun and what they were driving through not too long ago.
And Glen Cove, a friend of mine, Brandy, just made the point that Glen Cove has kind of a one street in and out, which is also another concern for the folks in there. So if everyone tries to leave at the same time, they're going to get stuck on the streets in there too, because it is one of those like built-in communities where you drive down Glen Cove Parkway and then you're kind of in the little neighborhood, but there's not several ways to get out of that area should the need arise. And so certainly this is a situation that we're going to have to keep a very close eye on and throughout the day, because this is not going to be a fire that goes out, unfortunately, quickly. And so when you're trying to get the fire out, trying to get the people out, trying to get the communication going, and trying to get resources, what we haven't seen, at least I haven't seen. Have you seen a fire engine yet?
I thought I saw one there in one of our earlier shots, but it's the only one I've seen. From an incident command standpoint, this presents an awful lot of challenges in that you've got structures, you've got people that are, you know, precariously in their homes. Do you evacuate? Do you shelter in place? You got high voltage lines. You've got buildings on fire. You also have potential of hazardous materials, chemicals in that area.
And a major highway.
And a major highway.
And a bridge.
And a bridge.
You may have no power. You can't get information.
Well, let's bring up the power because we have an outage map that came out about 9 o'clock, and this will give you an idea of who has power, who does not. And if we can kind of zero in that, well, Marin, 118,000, you can read them for yourself, but if we can see...
Solano County is where Vallejo is, and that's 25,000. That generally has been up in the Fairfield area and less down towards, you know, Vallejo.
Was Benicia out?
I don't believe Benicia was out or included in that outage. Again, because of some of the development that was done, I think a lot of the power lines in the city of Benicia are underground. Not all of them, but a good deal of them as compared to some of the other communities that are in these, you know, heavily wooded and rural areas. But certainly
it's complicating
a very
the situation.
Complicated situation. Absolutely. I actually have a friend my friend Colleen, who just said, I still have power. So Benicia and my friend Aaron, they're like, Benicia was not out, so yes, they were not out. So the 25,000 in Solano, that is not the Benicia Vallejo area, and that's going to be an issue if these lines come down to that they are energized, and that's going to maybe further add to it.
How much does that complicate it, Mark? I mean, they can obviously pick up their phone and make phone calls. They can see and smell the smoke, but not being able to watch TV
most people would probably at this point start to leave. You know, they're going to panic a little bit. Yeah, absolutely, which is understandable. And now you've got, like you said earlier, Frank, the highway shut down in one direction and traffic in the other. So can you egress out of there if Glen Cove is a one-way in, one-way out neighborhood? Maybe for folks, it's trying to find an area that's not involved in the fire, where the fire isn't moving to. You may not